else? All right, what's up, everybody? I thought coming into here today, the thing that I like is a new season comes at you fast. And last year I stood up here at this time and talked about how important it is to turn the page and get ready for what's ahead and the challenges that go with that. Honestly, it's a similar message today. The biggest difference is the record. And they were way different, but the message should still be similar each and every year as you're going through it and the process that you go through to get there. So whether you kick ass and throw a hell of a year or not nearly enough wins, the only carryovers I really want are the lessons that you want to take, from that season and don't repeat them again. And there are plenty for us. But as it begins, there's a cool part to this process. We had free agency meetings last week. Now here, and doing a lot of the interviews in the evenings. There's a lot of cool things that start during this week in envisioning, what parts of your team could look different, by adding some of the players. So with all that said, glad to get rocking with you guys, and we'll go through it all.
Coach, I know you're a huge supporter of emerging vets and players. How much do you lean on mental health for your players and these guys that are coming out of mental health?
Yeah, it's a big deal, and I think, first off, it's heartbreaking to hear, about Rondale. I'm hopeful that we get to a point that we're not talking about mental health just when a tragedy hits, but that we're talking about it on a regular basis. Then we know we're making real strides in that. One of the things from the NFL standpoint, the advancements we've made is in player engagement and knowing that each team, has a full team there ready to help and support and put those resources into effect. But that would be my my hope that we're talking about it way more than just when tragedy takes place. John, yeah, I think one of the things I really respect from their team, like an identity, and those are things that can stand the test of time and last. But I thought, just when you're playing his teams through the years, it's going to be a tough game, and the attitude, the style of the team. Players may change, and they did, through the years, but I thought the identity of John stayed consistent, even though scheme may change offensively, how they would do things. I think that's the mark of a really good coach.
Along those same lines, Mike McCarthy being in Pittsburgh, what makes him such an effective?
Yeah, isn't that awesome to have Mike back in Pittsburgh of all places? It's such a cool thing. He has such pride of being from Pittsburgh, and so any of us that know Mike, we've all heard Pittsburgh stories. But I think it's fitting for him to go there because when I think of Mike, I think of discipline, I think of toughness, I think of things that, like we were talking about Harbaugh, that stand the test of time in coaching. And I got to see that firsthand, with Mike and what that looks like on a regular basis of really high standards, not letting it slip. And he's going to do great things there. It's a fantastic organization. I thought that's just a great fit for Mike and for Pittsburgh.
Dan, heading into next year, where do you think the biggest improvements can be on the roster or the coaching staff in general to return to an NFC championship or even a Super Bowl?
Well, we did a lot of digging to start off, and so the first piece of that, we've had some staff changes that we've went through, and although those are difficult, there's also a lot of excitement that comes with that, how we'll feature the players, what things would be different. And then the first thing you want to do from a player standpoint, obviously we evaluate our own team on the roster, how would we feature them, who are free agents, and then the whole next process begins, free agency around the league and then through the draft. So you just don't want to miss one step of those. The first step for that was on the coaching side, then it goes into your own team, and then free agency, and then finally onto the draft. So it takes the full process to get there and go through that. And then as you get into the spring and training camp, putting your team together and creating standards like we talked about earlier, that's why I love coaching, honestly, is putting the puzzle pieces in the right spots to go make that happen. We've got a lot of heavy hitters on this roster, and I can't wait to get back to work with them. We're close, Nikki. We're, I would say, probably a day or two away from all the way finalizing, but yeah, for the most part, it's pretty intact, and we've had good meetings with the coaches. They've begun that process. We had a week last week where a lot of it was devoted to free agency, but it's been nice to see David and Durante and the staffs, kind of build their connection as they're talking through systems together. There's some good energy that comes from that, because you're actually starting at the beginning to say, well, this is why we're going to call this, and this is how we want to play this. And so I like that feeling of what that is, and I like, what I'm seeing so far from them. Yeah, it matters a lot, because that ability to affect the QB, it's one of the biggest tenets in winning the game, for obviously scoring and that, but the ability to hit and pressure the quarterback. It also forces takeaways. Those are like things. So you want to see somebody that has demonstrated speed and initial quickness to beat somebody on the field. And I think that can be one thing as we get into this week and you hear timings and that, hey man, let's go back to that demonstrated speed on the field and playmaking ability. And so that at the top is what I see. But beating somebody to the punch, having an explosive, get off to make someone feel like overwhelmed, that's what all of the great rushers have. Because that. Yes, and it keeps gaining momentum and strength, and it's one of the things I love about coaches, Zach, because what we once did, 10 years ago is different than how we do things today, where analytics was just called statistics, and we use those in certain ways, and now that's grown as much. And how do we simulate models for game management? How can we simulate in-game practice models to show coaching down and distances, different personnels, points of the game. So yeah, I think it's going to continue to grow, and it is one of the fun parts of the job.
How do you balance it all with coordinators, scouts, yourself, and especially having two young coordinators now? How do you value their input?
Yeah, and I think it starts with Adam, wanting to be collaborative with the coaches, and the coaches also being able to deliver the information that, Adam and the scouts need as well. And so there's nothing, the college scouts who are on the road, at the schools, at the games live, they start the entire process and drive so much of it. And so the coaches get to come in and add a vision of what the player could become in our system. So there's definitely a blend that I think takes place. From the better the scouts and the coaches connect and know one another, the easier it is for them to see how they would fit into the offense and the defense. And so that's why through this spring, there's some important processes to go through with both coordinators, coaching staff, scouting staff, to keep encouraging that dialogue, amongst each other.
When you do that, is that something that for a coordinator, did somebody treat you that way or how you're in a certain way?
Yes. From my first time being in the NFL, I was at the San Francisco 49ers, and that was my first experience into that. When you were a college coach, you did the recruiting and you looked at it. And so I would say a number of the people there taught me what excellent could look like in pro football. A guy by the name of Bill McPherson, who had been a coach and was the pro director at that time, talking about DPRs. At that time, I didn't know what that was, and how would you feature a player or a short yardage fullback, and how different players help the roles and how they go to win. And so since that time, I've been much more interested in what a player can do and how would we feature them than the traits of things that they don't have. And I think that's where it all comes together, as opposed to what a player can't do. Is what can they at the very highest level, what makes them so unique and excellent, and try to put them in those spots as often as you can.
As somebody who's into self-assessment as you are, what do you kind of take away from this past year? Change for this year? Does that already start?
Yes, it definitely has already started. I would say, how I'm structuring my own time, I think, is a big piece of that too, Ben. But as we're going through the spring, as we're getting into training camp, those are other things that you'll see some differences that, that would feel, differently for me and for the players. So there's a lot that I'm going into, and the systems and the processes that we're going through. I've actually started that before it was the end of season evaluations, then the free agency process. So I've tried to implement as many of those as I could to make sure I'm hitting all of those at the highest level that I can.
Now that you guys have been several years of players like transferring a lot or maybe listening to make sure you kind of
I don't think it's changed the way you evaluate, but I do think there's a different perspective of them coming in with their first paycheck. You know, that was a question years ago, what are you going to get, or when you have this signing bonus. And so the fact that some of that's already taking place, there's actually a little less of that for the player when they come, you know, to your organization right away. So in some ways there's some advantages that I feel. It's interesting to hear the different spots along the ways. Why do guys transfer? Was it opportunity, or for more playing time, or, you know, a financially, you know, better scenario for themselves? And hearing those stories are helpful, but the evaluation piece has stayed consistent. It does help that you now can even see him in a different system. Okay, what was he playing here? What was that the year prior? How would that look like? And so having different, you know, connection points to that, I think that does help.
Sometimes they're looking for steps and they're not working out as much. Is that evaluation?
No, that's their choice, but I think the part that does, like I always come back to, is like, what's that demonstrated tape look like? And the workouts help, but sometimes even for here, obviously I haven't seen all the players yet, so the interview portion and getting to know them without any bias, sometimes that can help. And then I'll write something down that they said, okay, is that real? Is that accurate? And I'll follow up on that. But I do like when I see them do that for the movements in there, and between here and pro days, we'll see that. But I think at the end, it still comes down to like their football performances. Yeah, it's a big topic, and earlier we were talking about, you know, the mental health, not just when, you know, a tragedy, or in this case that you're referring to, is when an injury takes place, but making sure how's the ball player doing, also, and more importantly, like how's the man doing, knowing that you do feel isolated and separate from the team in those spaces. And so I can't speak for everyone else, but for my own spot, I want to check on them first to see how they're dealing with the injury, dealing with the surgery, you know, because on the swing, when it's getting closer, that's easier, because then there's something close to back to returning to play. When it's the initial parts of it and knowing I'm staring at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, the entire season, those are harder conversations, and you just want to make sure they're checking in. And so I love, even during this time, although it's lonelier, but having the players who can do their rehabs in the building, I like it selfishly because I get to see them and check in and see how they're doing. And everybody's got their own process to do that, but it's very important.
Dan, is Ben Sinnott a better fit when he thinking about offenses in the future? How much of that assessment in under playing for the Titans?
Yeah, well, I'd say featuring Ben in the ways, you know, that he can do his things. It's in the backfield. It's, you know, through, like, to compare him to Zach, they're way different skill sets, you know. So, like, I know they're both playing tight end, but, you know, they're featured differently in that way. And so what I do know is him on the move, and whether it's the run game, pass game, running away from people, maybe not finding the zone and stopping, those are differences. And I'm looking forward to seeing that this year.
Derek, Chris Paul, obviously, going to be a free agent.
Yeah.
What do you see the biggest growth in him? And I'm assuming, asking you like that, I'm assuming you're going to say, like, what do you see the biggest growth in?
Yeah, I'm super proud of Chris. I thought the development, you know, that he made, and playing alongside of Laramie, I thought a couple things that jump out to me, John. I thought, like, the combination blocks with the two of them, these are strong people that could move people off the line of scrimmage. And then I thought, because of Chris's athleticism, the things that showed up the most to me is him in pass protection. And so having the ability to mirror somebody, to stay in front, those were the things that I saw week after week from Chris. It's not easy, that spot, back up, but to see that time for him to develop, you know, I thought that was a big deal and something I'm proud of him for sure.
So how big of a two more?
Yes, but we're going through the whole process like everybody counts in that, you know, not the same, but everybody's part of it. But, yeah, definitely somebody that, like, obviously we're keeping close tabs on. Is Adam and his team are going through that.
Anything else?
I already know.
How do you think Durante's system can benefit?
I think the versatility will help in some of that, Nikki. What's so much fun about coaching Duran, he's big enough to be a 3-4 end. You guys saw some of that here early on. He's got the strength that can play inside at nose tackle and quickness to move. So to see JK and he and Johnny, and how do we feature them on the field together some, having the three of those together, that excites me, honestly. These are guys that really love to battle and compete, and so because they're versatile, it gives Durante even more options of how to deploy and how to match up guys. So it's a big deal for us.
Coach Quinn, take us back to the inspiration. Why you love continuing? What was that thing right here this year?
I think it drives like competition and connection. That's what drives me. From the game, from when I started playing, the connection, being on a team. I've been on over 70 of them in my life of teams, and I've always felt that's when I'm at my best. And then I love the competition, whether it was football, other sports to go, but that's the thing that has always driven me, why I wanted to get from playing even into coaching. It's the connection and the competition.
All right. Thanks, TQ.
All right. See you guys.